Welcome back to another episode of the BMK Vision podcast. Gary, every time I'm with a partnership, every time I'm, even with an owner, things get real uncomfortable when we talk about owner compensation. And I don't really think it's about money. It's about, how clearly some owners, look at their business. And I think the most common thing that I observe is as long as that owner or those partners are making whatever they said they needed to make for their, household budget, net profit be damned. Who cares? And I think that leads to a lot of interesting decision making where there's not that pressure to um, perform better, whether it's a combined GP, service GP, AGP. Quick thought on that.
Are you saying that they give up on their business once they reach a certain personal dollar amount? Is that what you're finding?
I think give up might be the right word. I think there's not any pain that incentivizes change. As humans, I unfortunately believe it's not through pain. Anything less than pain, and we don't make change.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely subscribe to that. I do wonder, how these owners are paying themselves these days. I always paid myself a very low salary. Like I honestly thinking back to running my MSP, I don't know that I ever paid myself more than like 40 grand a year in salary. Um, which meant that the business needed to do a substantial amount of profit for me to pay myself more. Um, and I was always good with that. Never, there was never a time where I was like, oh, I should just make myself more money as a W-2 employee to feel better. Like that didn't ever cross my mind. But maybe I'm probably built different than some guys. But is there another scenario
There
that
is a whole nother scenario out there, and I think I think a lot of folks will their initial foray into owning the business. It's hey, I need to do better than my last job that I had. I just have to make better. And then they like make all this money and they're doing great. And then their accountant says, hey, you got to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And here's the benefits of walking that balance between profit distribution versus W 2. And I think that's where a lot of the focus gets, which is great. But oftentimes we see the folks that get to that W-2 payment, and that payment has to be enough for them to cover their nut at home. And then either that's great and that's awesome, or they're just fighting this battle of always trying to grow the business, getting comfortable with that base salary or that W-2 salary and saying, well, profit will come down the line. So anyway, I think I'm working with a couple clients, and I'm just going to paraphrase the scenario from an owner in a partnership. All right, so and I don't think I can do it justice as a non-actor to really convey the frustration in this person's words, and the piece they left out. I'll add as well. Okay, I've got a mortgage, I've got kids in school, I've got real financial obligations, in this case, debt for sure. And the advice I keep hearing from you, Josh, is to cut the salary, tie your comp to profit, take less home so the business looks healthier on paper. That was said with some real disdain. And like I didn't get into this company to pay myself less. Does this actually work? Who's this working for? And why are my partners acting like this is an obvious solution? So we hear a lot of fear in that, where they can't, I don't think they're digesting the entire message, but that's the scenario we're faced with here today, Gary.
Yeah, and that wrinkle of partnerships is really the key to this situation. Um, being in multiple partnerships over my career, you do kind of feel like, well, everyone kind of needs to be paid for their effort, and if we're gonna pay, we should, make it even, or at least compensate accordingly, um, because we don't know if profit's going to be around. Like it's too much risk, um, especially if you're paying yourself a good salary. So I think that adds some real difficulty when you're assessing this. It's much cleaner if it's like, hey, dude, you know, your company can be making a ton of profit and you're just taking all that home. Um, like cap yourself and see what that does. But with that partnership play, it's like, yeah, now you have three people and they're not all going to be aligned from a financial standpoint, most likely. So it's a very difficult problem to address, I would imagine.
Yeah, and and I know you and I have spent a lot of time over the last year on this topic, even at Bering McKinley. I know for myself, I got really comfortable with the mode we were in, where it's like, oh, we're growing, growing, growing. Some bad revenue in there as well, and the one thing that didn't change, and the only thing that went up was my W-2 payroll, because I have some, phantom partners out there where it's like, okay, they all have equity in a phantom manner. And it's like, hey, we're not very profitable, gang, but I'm making my money. That plays a little different than if all my, phantom partners were deeply involved in the business. But I know it was, through your direction and really kind of having to make some pretty amazing spreadsheets to say, this is what you're making. This is where you, Josh, have forgotten how your business makes money. You've just forgotten. You're not dumb. You've just forgotten. And so every year watching, substandard profit levels, it's like, well, what happens in the model that you suggested and brought to bear was, hey, cut that W-2 stuff down and watch what happens when you perform. How much clearer are the decisions you're making? How much clearer is it in even simple conversations about how you onboard? And I'm bringing that solution to unique situations to clients to say, have you forgotten how the company makes money? Is that what's really going on here? Are you tolerating some bad decisions that they're only bad because you didn't really know what the impact would be on profit, and you've forgotten that you're in the business to be profitable, so you actually can pay yourself even more than that W-2.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of increasing that profit to as high as possible. Because what I do know definitively is anyone that's doing 15, 20, 25% profit, when they realize that over a period of time, they'll start protecting that. Like it's the ones that do okay, and then they start adding in all that owner discretionary stuff like, oh, let me get that car that I always wanted and we'll put that in the business so it's a business expense and it's a
You don't have to
write-off,
air all
right?
my dirty laundry, Gary.
This is totally me too. It's like you learn what a write-off is when you're really young and immature and you think, oh, well, that's just free money that I don't pay taxes on. The right calculation is whatever you just spent, you get to write off 35% of that, you know? So that, $1,000 payment, was really sweet when you thought it was $0 out of your pocket, but, it's just $350 that you're saving that money on. But that's real. So, it creeps up in all these weird places, especially when you're a solo owner. It's like, you got your W-2, then you got your distributions, and then you got your discretionary stuff. And, you're just kind of playing this game of like, how much can I save on taxes? And you just totally forget, like, you know, what's the company really built for? Is it built to just pay you for all the things that you want to spend money on? Or is it to kind of build some wealth and build some stability in the company?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think where that really shows up in some MSPs is, I've long, kind of struggled with this, where I can get pretty bombastic, I can get pretty theatrical about 33% service salaries to service revenue. If you're 1 point over, you're really creating this huge problem for yourself. And I think I've conveyed that message well. But most folks, it's month after month, quarter after quarter, and it starts turning into years. I'm like, I don't, I've lost the ability to say, I've got this magic word that you're suddenly going to feel like you get it now. And you'll go through this journey of, if you get it, now you're going to go through this journey of either, raising prices, being more serious about billable utilization, but there's no pain because you still got your, you know, $12,000 a month paycheck. And so now you've just continued in some less than ideal decision making. So do you think there's a correlation there? I think I see it pretty clearly, and I would feel pretty confident you do as well.
I think so. I think that totally makes sense. I mean, when there's no pain, when you're comfortable, you tend to take your foot off the gas a little bit. You let things slip a little bit, and yeah, it's fine. It can go on. That can go on for a long time. We talked about this the other day. It's like, some of the decisions you get to control, but probably the majority are these external forces. That client that just, didn't renew their contract, or, you got to pay your guys extra or they're going to leave. Like, these are things that you don't really have full control over. So the answer isn't like, hopefully that doesn't happen. Like, and I don't think that most MSP owners think that way. I think that they maybe shove that stuff down and it's like, God, hope it doesn't happen, but I'm gonna try my hardest for it to not happen as well. Like, that's why I'm here. Um, but you get lulled into that, hey, it hasn't happened. We're adding more business, things are going good. Let me pay myself a little bit more. Um, and then, what at the end, was it the worst thing in the world? Your business was doing 6% net profit. Guy comes in to buy it, and he accepts that as the number. I don't think it's the worst thing. I mean, if you got paid all the way through, but the thing that I think we should point out is, like, most of the companies making that 6% aren't actually paying themselves all that well. You know, this is a tough
Right.
business.
Yeah.
It's a really tough business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, if you talk to enough owners who are still, relevant in their tech skills, and they've really grown as, awesome people, you'll hear them say, I could go get a job and make 300K a year. And they're not wrong. It's like, okay, I believe you. Why are you making 170? Because 170 is nothing to sneeze at. Like, that's amazing. Many people would love 170, but not when you think through just how hard this business is and the risks that you have involved. So I think they get kind of in this stuck spot of, I could go make more doing a job for someone else. Okay, cool. Now let's take that energy and apply it into the business. So that advice and that reaction that I get from that one member of a partnership, I am mad at it. I think it's really about uh, this is a strategic play. It's almost even just a tactic to say, we're not doing this, or we're not suggesting this so you make less money. We're doing this because we're solving these other problems, that your decision making velocity is too slow. Your conviction behind, I want to see this as a profitable business, has just been so diminished, it's almost at zero. So we just have to
Yeah.
model it out for you to say, hey, here's actually a path where you could make way more.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
And it's not
You know,
really, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I think there's a balance too, right? Like, when I'm looking at owner pay and I'm looking at the P&L, you know, the first place I start is like, okay, let me just take myself out of the business, or let me take the owner out of the business, and let's hire someone to do the owner's job. And how much can the business actually afford to pay? And how much is someone willing to take? Right. And I think when you're smaller in maturing, you're probably paying yourself less than what anyone would be willing to take for that role. To your point, I could go make 300 grand somewhere else. Um, and you're starving that that profitability because, of course, right? Like you need to pay you need to pay yourself. So, generally it doesn't necessarily matter if your W-2 is super high, you're still going to starve that through distribution. So your net profit might look good, but at the end of the year, you got no cash in the bank. So it's the same problem, it's like, okay, fine. My EBITDA looks great, but the reality is like you're not actually paying yourself enough in that case. So it's going against kind of what you're trying to convey here, which is like, hey, take a little less, show profit more, and then kind of light a fire on you to kind of make more money. I think that's a real thing, but I don't know if that's the most normal thing that's happening out there. And I'm not saying you're right, you're wrong, and I'm right. I am a little unsure about like what scenario is most likely the case, and I'm kind of leaning towards it's all kind of true. Like all of these scenarios exist.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a very specific channel for whom this topic needs to resonate for. It's you're in a partnership and one or two partners, either, you're in a three-person partnership and you're kind of finding that your partners just aren't getting it. They've lost all the signal. Like one partner's like, yeah, we learned all these metrics and we learned how we should actually be looking at our P&L, but we're not doing anything about it. And okay, well, here's a really great lever to pull. Or you've got that scenario where you are a solo owner and you just always are feeling like you're living on the edge and you aren't making the same decisions that maybe your peers are making, or you just don't think they can really apply or be true to you. It's just you've lost the signal. You've lost that ability. 'Cause what I assure you is that if you said, "Hey, my bare minimum that I can do to like cover my nut at home is $6,000." Well, when you see that first paycheck come in for $3,000 of the 2-week period and it's cut down to 2,200, at that exact moment, you will see, oh, well, wait a minute. We didn't bill that guy for that thing? Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean we didn't capture the cost of the product before we ordered it? Everything becomes very real. And, maybe you don't have to do it forever, but do the exercise and let it play for a few months and just see if you're making decisions differently. Recapture the signal.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is very specific to owners, right?
Uh-huh. Mhm.
It's like the risk, we forget what risk means. And so especially if we have three owners, it's highly unlikely they're all being compensated properly as owners. They're probably, you know, doing a job inside the business that they're being compensated for, but that risk gets removed from them, right? And the risk is what we're talking about. It's like, hey, you know, as an owner, your job isn't to show up and just do a role and then get paid for that role. That's an employee. So if you want to be employee, that's fine, but you don't get the upside risk, that you're supposed to get, right? Like it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, let's just pay all of our employees a profit share. So we have to recalibrate ourselves as owners and say, hey, are we actually owners? And if we are, yeah, we might have a job doing technical work or sales, but like that's a job that we should be trying to replace ourselves with often, right? Like we should be constantly trying to fill in all of that quote unquote, employee level work. And we should own the outcomes of those departments. Especially as three owners, it's like you really need to have three different people owning three different outcomes. Otherwise, the risk isn't there, and you're really not gonna, you know, be incentivized properly.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's a really good point when you start thinking about, what is your job in that ownership role within the business. So if you're like I think this really starts hitting more and more true to that sub $3 million, maybe in that sub $4 million MSP, where it's like you probably are pretty actively engaged in the business. Maybe you've, anchored more towards you stay really technical with the clients. Okay. Good thing, bad thing, probably not a good thing. But if that's going to be your reality for a while, then we need to tie your additional compensation above that just really low base to say, here's the measurements of how you do that job. Do it well, and you're gonna get paid for every hour you bill or whatever it may be. But more often, I think it's that owner that still is very involved in sales. It's like, all right, cool. Well, the sales budget is, you're taking, 5,000 a month. The sales budget is 10,000 a month. Maybe we're just paying you on closed deals. Maybe you're going to live and say, how much different will we behave? How much smarter will I spend these marketing and sales dollars? How much more willing am I to get out there and meet some strangers when I see that the job that I'm assigned to beyond being the owner, maybe I'm just not performing at the level that I would if I was hungry again.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is like, can the company actually afford to pay you? Like you probably aren't considering this conversation if everything's looks okay,
That's
right?
right.
Like, if you're growing at 20-25% a year and you got a 10 to 15, maybe 20%, net profit EBITDA, like you don't need to hear this from us. Who are we to tell you you're doing it wrong? But that's not the reality. And the reality is, you're probably too stuck inside the business. You're not really trying to create separation between ownership and an employee. You're willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and do all the work. And that's totally cool. It's just totally holding the company back.
Right. 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 Yeah. That's that real hard look in the mirror of saying, are we doing okay? Are we actually okay? Am I really okay with this? Is there a chance that I've lost the plot here in the business? If I got partners and they're telling me I have or that we have, then you got to pay attention to this. You have to. And if some other you know, trends that you might see is have we been bouncing between 1.8 and 2.3 for 5 years? Have we been, showing up with consultants and they're telling us our P&L isn't looking, as good as it could? Pay attention to that. This is a really big flashing lever that you can say, I'm going to push or I'm going to pull on this thing to see if that's what gets me unstuck. Because stuck is that's our theme of the year, I think, Gary, is why we get stuck. This is just another variable of where you might be stuck.
Yeah. And the season of the owner matters too. When you're 25, 30 years old as an owner, you aren't thinking about exiting. You aren't really even considering, too much around pay. You're really just, like excited to work hard and you like that title and that's fun and that can also last a while, but that thing comes to an end. Yeah. Like have a couple kids, try to get to soccer on the weekends. Like it'll set you up and it'll correct you and then and then most people come to the realization of like, oh, okay, wow. No one's actually really driving this ship. I'm just kind of a passenger, and it's kind of working, and it's really out of off brute force that it continues to go through. Um, so, if that if that change happens, that season turns over, and you're in a new season, um, you're gonna find out like, oh shoot, like in order to get what I used to get, I got to hire someone, and now we really can't afford me anymore.
Yeah, and I think that the an additional layer of challenge in here is, majority of the MSP owners I've encountered, they've got a really high personal financial IQ. We don't see a lot of kind of immature behavior around debt typically. We see people living pretty modest lives, within their means, is what I really should say. They do fine, they save, they're just, pretty fiscally responsible. Then you look at their business and it's like, well, how do I get you to want to perform even better? Because I'm not going to win the battle by saying, look, you're making 120,000. What would happen if you made 180,000? It's a pretty big lift to get somebody to re-envision what that would look like. And it's a frustrating spot as an outsider to watch happen. It's like I know you can do better, but what's going to be the right thing that happens? And for many, it's going to be we lost a couple of clients, had a couple of technicians leave, and you got to go through this trauma before those gates will open, where you'll say, "Tell me some ideas, give me some thoughts here." Oh, getting ahead of it's not a bad thing. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this, Gary?
No, I think the owners, they know when it's time to really make the decision to change, they will. Um, Never too early to start though.
No, that's for sure. And I think kind of coming back into the read of this individual, it's like, no, you didn't build this company to pay yourself. Like that's not the point. You built it to actually build something, and you can't actually see that when what you're building is just like a paycheck, and that paycheck not moving for years. You built it to build something of real value.